I'm Lawrence Williams, and I'm West Philadelphia born and raised. No, but actually, I'm Lawrence Williams. I'm a principal at the De-Carceration Fund, and we focus on a venture capital fund, seed stage, early stage startups, investing in the criminal justice space, and really would like to frame, kind of our conversation around investing in returning citizens. So each year there are 650,000 people that come out of the criminal justice system, and a year after that, 75% of them are still unemployed. And so each one of us here at this panel is looking to address that problem in different ways that are best suited to us. There are a bunch of different problems that play into that, like the healthcare system or the education system, or a bunch of different ways. But the way we would like to frame this conversation as investors, as business owners, as activists, how can we frame the space of hiring returning citizens, investing in returning citizens, and providing support holistically for returning citizens. And so we'll love to have each person here kind of talk about, introduce themselves and maybe how they got into the space, and we can dive into a couple of different questions. Yeah, come on.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name's Quan Nguyen. I'm the executive director for Defy Ventures in Southern California. We're a national nonprofit. Our mission is to shift mindsets to give people with criminal histories their best shot at a second chance through career readiness, personal development, and entrepreneurship training programs. We do an inside-out approach. We begin with the currently incarcerated. We run a 7-month program, 1,200-page curriculum. It culminates in them doing a business pitch that's judged Shark Tank style. We bring quite a bit of the venture capitalists, tech, and entrepreneur business world in with us, because we also realize our mission is twofold. It's not only shifting the hearts and minds of those that are incarcerated, but those that can actually help us make an impact out here in the community, and that's the business world. So that's basically what our mission is. I got involved with Defy Ventures as a program graduate first when I was currently incarcerated with a life sentence back in 2015. Fortunately, I was paroled that year. Stayed involved with the program, launched my first company 6 months after. Still running to this day. I have 6 employees. 4 of them are also formerly incarcerated. Tell everybody those are my best workers by far. I'm a published author and jumped on board with Defy back in 2017. Over the years, my roles and responsibilities have just grown, and now I get to oversee our program delivery over all of Southern California, 7 prisons, 2 transitional homes, our entrepreneurship bootcamp program, and our entire post-release. So, honored to be here.
My name is Matt. I am the CEO of Firebrand Artisan Breads in Oakland, California. And we are a employee-owned company that focuses on hiring people who are formerly homeless, formerly incarcerated. We started about 14 years ago. We've got about almost 100 people at the moment now. We got into focusing on this population mainly. My mom was formerly incarcerated, and so kind of just seeing how when people leave the criminal justice system, they enter like just a whole matrix that is just this whole second-class citizen status that is just terrible. It's terrible to try to navigate. So we tried to see how can we impact that? How can we try to see people as whole individuals who have not only need a job, but they need the soft skills training, they need financial literacy help, they need a bank account, they need a lot of other things that we take for granted, and how can we use our resources as a business to affect that change, and how can we change that tide of recidivism? 70% of people who get out of prison are back in prison in 3 years in California. So how can we help stem that tide as a business? So we're always trying to look at things holistically. We brought in a nonprofit. We built an office for them at Firebrand to help provide some of these soft skills training and help provide GED classes and really kind of be kind of an extension of the company. But yeah, we're always trying to kind of find new ways to try to help people kind of get back on their feet, connect back with their communities, and kind of really stay out of the prison system and criminal justice system kind of at large. Yeah.
Cool. And I'm Chris Bentley with Lawrence, partnered at the De-Carceration Fund, and our focus is sort of our mission alignment is around ethically disrupting the criminal justice system, and we're trying to do that by investing in solutions that either make it less likely that people get into the system in the first place, make for a more successful transition out of the system, or reduce suffering to individuals and their families while they're in the system. And a great deal of our focus and a part of our discussion today is really around, looking at our pipeline of companies that we invest in, and the companies that we're both looking at and we've already invested in. Roughly about 50% of them are also founded by returning citizens. And like strong founders, right? The strongest founders, intimately understand the problems that they're trying to solve, and that's a really sort of huge factor. But also trying to understand what are the other support systems that they need that may be different than, and it's very similar to anytime you're investing in underrepresented groups of people, you got to figure out what are the other support systems they need. These generally have to start investing a bit earlier. Most of our founders don't have friends and family rounds that they're doing before they raise money. So it's a whole different sort of context, and so that's really been our push and our focus.
No, 100%. So I guess Quan, on that same vein of being close to the problem, can you talk a little bit more about your work at Defy Ventures and maybe some challenges and opportunities that you see in the space as someone that has been through experience?
Sure. Yeah, to give you context, 84% of our program graduates upon release are at the 1 year mark are currently employed. Those are numbers we're currently fantastically proud of. Like you guys were saying, 70% of 2 out of 3 will go back to prison within 3 years. Our numbers are under 15%. They're actually even lower than that, but it's it fluctuates because of parole violations, stuff like that. But so those are numbers we're proud of. And we say, okay, it's not only the program that we're doing, but it's the community of supporters. It's the equipping them with the right soft skills, and then also speaking to employment partners or potential employment partners. Usually my discussions with them is hey, I'm not here to ask you to give a job to anybody. What we're asking you to do is do your due diligence, interview, settle on the best possible candidate. If it happens to be one of our graduates, we're asking you to either look past the criminal conviction or bring them in for an additional interview and have them talk to you about what they did during their incarceration. How did they transform their lives? What are they up to now? I think one of the biggest challenges we've seen is just we have CEOs that come into prison with us, love the program, and we say, hey, I want to hire, my initiative is to hire 100 of your graduates, and I'm going to connect you with our HR person. We go to speak to the HR, and suddenly words get thrown out about liability and, we only want nonviolent offenders. And so there's an unconscious bias that's there where we'll ask people, do you believe in second chances? And vast majority of people will say yes, but then, or if someone's done their time, should they be sentenced to a second sentence upon release? And everyone says no, but that's basically what's happening when we're putting up these barriers for reentry, either in housing, in employment, and it happens all the time. It happens all the time.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, Matt, as someone, would love to hear about, fair chance hiring practices and kind of, the system that you put in place, and operationally, what does that take? What does that require?
Yeah, so we do, I think Grayston was the one that trademarked it, but we do open hiring. We started doing open hiring about 12 years ago. So that the basic to that is just, we don't take job applications, we don't do resumes, we don't do background checks, we just put your name on a clipboard, we call you, we tell you what we have available, you come in, you get 2 to 3 paid tryouts. If, we think you are interested in the job, you're a good fit, and a lot of that good fit is not, which can also be a trap, is like, they're not a good culture fit, is not a culture fit. It's, are you asking questions? You're taking notes? Do you seem engaged? Are you interested in actually doing this work and being a part of the company, not a culture fit? Because here at Firebrand, at least, we like to think of people can come into Firebrand and then expand what Firebrand is. Firebrand's not this box that people fit in. It's this kind of nebulous thing that that changes all the time based on who's there. The average person's been there for almost 5 years. So that really does change. So we try to remove as many barriers as possible, because we recognize that people are coming in, they don't have the thing. So let's just not ask you for the thing. Like, you're 35 and you haven't had a job. We get it. Do you want to work? Cool. There you go. There's a bench knife. There's an apron. Like, let's get busy. So we try to just remove as many of those barriers as possible, because you can get into some traps of, well, is this, was it a violent offense or what type of offense? And it's like, I don't know. I didn't ask. I don't care. Like, that's not, we're not trying to put people through another maze to deal with. And so, but that does make it tricky. You do have, when the guy said, when one employee says to another employee, like, I just got out of jail for murder, and like, okay, well, we got to talk about that. Like, what does that mean to you? What does that mean to you? Like, that doesn't mean I'm going to do anything to this person. They have a right to be here just as much as you do, but like, we do need to talk about it. So we talk a lot at Firebrand. We have a lot of discussions about it, but we try really hard not to we don't have 2 distinct populations at Firebrand. Like, we're all members of the same team. There's not the special team here and the special team there. So we try to be really hard about, like, that's none of your business. So just drop it, because it doesn't matter. Just as your background isn't your business and your background isn't your business. So we try to be pretty militant about that fact. And we just don't ask a lot of questions. So, yeah.
I mean, and Chris, do you want to expand from an investor perspective of, companies you might look at from on a fair chance hiring perspective, or just taking a different angle?
Yeah, definitely. One of the really interesting parts about sort of how when Lawrence and I were designing this fund, one of the things we decided to do was build an investment committee, and half of our investment committee are returning citizens that are also successful founders. And a lot of that initial part was about, like, giving agency to the people that we're working to try and solve problems for. But really, it was like, our experience has been since then that it's been like, no, it's way more than that. These are the most valuable. The rest of our investment committee, has decades of experience in impact investing. Morgan Simon, Mark Watson, these are people you guys probably all know. They're around this community. But I have to tell you, the 3 individuals on our investment committee that are returning citizens and founders, like, they ask the most insightful questions of our companies that come and pitch. They, like, really probe into, the impact, and it's been really like this huge benefit into the design of the fund that, candidly, I don't want to admit, but the truth is, like, that's even a benefit that I didn't even realize how powerful it would be until we actually sort of experienced it.
I just think it's one thing to kind of, that just pops in my head, is also thing to think about is, people talk a lot about, like, second chance, but, like, we also have to realize, like, a lot of times these guys didn't get a first chance. Like this is their chance, and they just happen to be older, but, like, they're starting now. And I think we also try really hard. I know Defy also does a really good job. Like, these aren't charity cases. Like, we're not a charity. They're not a charity case. Like, they're human beings who we're working with, but, like, they're not a charity. We try really hard not to, like, that's not what we're doing here. So just to say that as well is important.
No, of course. I mean, I guess in that same vein, is there any I don't know, maybe public policy to support the work that, we're discussing here, or I know in Phil. Or anything else? No.
Second Chance Act, I would have to say it's kind of toothless. Toothless? Because there's no compliance. We've seen a lot of our graduates that come home, they're offered a job pending background check, and then the background comes up and the employer will come up with some other reason. Well, we're not sure, or you were not absolutely honest from the beginning. So they could kind of twist that around. I mean, we do, if I were part of this coalition here in California, I'm not sure if you know, California, the cost to incarcerate one human being per year is $106,000. And our program delivery for one person that's incarcerated is $1,500. And the rates of failure for those coming out of incarceration are 70%, in some of the studies. So we look at it as okay, well, the California prison budget is something like $14 billion. And we formed this coalition with other reentry providers and other community-based organizations that are providing the rehabilitative programs in prison to help these numbers drop. And part of the coalition is we're asking just for 1% of the California prison budget. And they are fighting us tooth and nail on this. And we can provide so much better programming for rehabilitative purposes, and we're unable to do it because of that. So that's policy part. Yeah, there's no policies on it. I mean, recently we were very fortunate to host about 7-8 legislative assembly people that came into Lancaster prison with us, so they got to see firsthand our program. But I emphasize to them, it's not only our program, I think it's just rehabilitative programs overall to help the men and women before they come out, and then helping them once they come home we issue, people coming out of our program, we issue them a Chromebook, we do technology training, tech basics actually. Sometimes it takes our program manager okay, let's not even look at this Chromebook yet, let's start with the phone. This is how you do a text message. So it's building that, rebuilding credit after reentry, building a network, and just getting them to do soft skills. We have networking events and just having regular conversations, and then building that space for one of our team members who is works with trauma-informed lens, and how does this help you in your transition, or whether it's relationship groups and things like that, being able to unpack all of that. So it takes quite a bit to be able to do any of this.
I mean, I guess just to play off of that, I don't know if you had something to say, but I was going to say that Matt, you kind of touched on not second chance hiring, but this is kind of the only chance for them. And you have a really interesting business model with giving equity to, some of the, to employees in the company. Would like for you to maybe explain a little bit about that model, and also how do you create something more than just a job? So you're creating an actual, something, this is something they can build on and believe in.
Yeah, and I think that was why, it kind of started little by little with Firebrand, starting with wages, and now we have a livable wage standard, and then, offering healthcare, and then dental, and then vision, and a couple years ago transitioned to a trust-owned company, so profit sharing is built into the company, and employees can actually get those distributable profits, and can actually get that equity from the company, and then training people with open book finance, open book management principles, and teaching them how to run the company, teaching them what it means to run the company, where they sit on the P&L and how they could influence that, and just teaching those people the agency within the company to be able to influence those profits, because that just flows right down to them eventually. So,
I don't know if you have anything on that, Chris.
Well, one thing, but I also wanted to piggyback on something so Matt, I'm going to set you up here because I love your answer when you say this, but where do you see yourself? Like, what is your long-term goal for you and Firebrand?
I'm being set up.
I might have read an article on that.
Yeah. So no, I mean, I we set it up so that, like, I always say, like I'm a one of those like dogs with like the barrel around its neck. Like, I need a job. I need to be working. I need like structure, and like, so it's like I'm not retiring. I'm not going anytime soon. My dad worked till the day he died. My mom worked till the day he died. I'm gonna work till I'm super old, hopefully. Like, I need a job. I want to work at Firebrand. I like working at Firebrand. This is what I do. I don't do shit else. I've never worked outside of a bakery. Like, this is what I do. Like, this is who I am, and that's changed a lot over the years. But, you know, I'm not in Firebrand because I'm gonna sell it and then like go move to the Bahamas. Like, Firebrand can't sell. Like, Firebrand is officially off the market, and as a trust, like, we can't sell. And so if everyone gets $100, I'm one employee, I get the same share as everybody else. I have a paycheck, I have a job, I have a board, I could be fired technically. Like, you know, there's all these things, but I wanted a job, and Firebrand's not like a cash cow that we just kind of just like draw a paycheck from every 2 weeks. So maybe is that the answer you were?
Yeah, it's exactly the answer I was looking for. I really sort of find the motivation inspiring and fascinating in the way you've sort of built this. I think one thing too that is not as much about policy, but more about how investors can think about things, even if they're not necessarily investing in this area specifically, which is look at your portfolio companies. And you're talking to a new portfolio company, just like we know now that we need to investigate, you know, are they a diverse leadership team? Are they, if they are working in one area around education, that doesn't mean they can ignore their environmental impacts, right? All these different things that we want to make sure that we holistically invest in. Well, we should be asking companies if they're implementing fair chance hiring practices, right? And what does that mean to them? Fair chance hiring practices. Fair chance hiring practices, right? So you know, are they not doing a background check because they don't really need to be doing a background check as part of the process, right? Or if there is, you know, do they really understand sort of the implications of how they're hiring and what biases may be going into their hiring practices? And so there's actually there's a fund called Lockstep Ventures, which is Marcus Glover's the founder, and he's actually put together a fair chance hiring pledge that is a rider that whenever he does an investment in a new portfolio company, he has the portfolio company sign onto this rider that says we're going to implement these HR practices within our organization. And Lawrence and I are actually trying to figure out how to incorporate that into the work that we do as well. It's a little bit easier to do with us because it's already part of the framework, but for all investors, they should be thinking about that.
Of course you can. Of course. Yes. Mm-hmm. Right. Fear of liability, right?
Well,
Attorneys.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Never once in hiring, I don't know, 100 and some odd people, ever done a background check.
You haven't, but so why did you not continue to do it?
Yeah.
Why do we make a bullshit? Like, we all do
Yeah.
well, I think that's, and I mean, what we were talking about when we were at South by Southwest, we said the same thing, like to tech founders. When you're starting your company, if you're intentional about going into this space, then re-examine everything. Examine the bylaws that you're signing on. Having these attorneys give you like this boilerplate language from the 80s and 90s, like on the mass incarceration policies of where they're othering people. So a lot of companies just still use this, unfortunately. At De-Fi Ventures, we also do a fair chance hiring simulation. So it's funny, like we'll sit there and we do the simulation where we do the poll of everybody of, okay, how many here believe in second chances? And like, if I ask you, everybody says yes, right? And then, so then we do the simulation where, okay, you've done your round of interviews, you've found the best possible candidate, you're about to give them an offer pending a background. The candidate discloses to you they have a background. Here is the rap sheet. Do you still hire them? Why or why not? So we have group discussions, and they go through like 4 or 5 candidate profiles. So the 90% of people in the room that said they believe in second chances or believe in once they've done the time it should be done, are usually now 20% are going to hire, or even less, and they come up with the unconscious bias of, well, there is liability and there is, what if it's dangerous? So yeah, that's part of the work that we continue to have to do.
I mean,
I'd like to kind of add on to that because we were with a big trucking operation once. They're talking about liability and, about why this thing. So one of my drivers would drive over a stop sign, for instance, and we go into court. The first thing that they're going to say is, Your Honor, we hired that guy knowing he had this conviction, and we told. Liability. Other countries don't do it the same way. I assume you're from England?
Yeah, but I only manage businesses here in the US.
Okay.
No.
But that it's liability is what is causing the background checks. And now as the labor market gets tighter, it's changing. Fastenal, a big provider of worker with us, is no longer asking the question. We think they're doing it in the Midwest, and I don't know their corporate Fastenal here. They even understands what happened, but they're not even asking. We had to retrain our people about how to respond to that question. So they're trying to go around their liability by just never knowing. So it's really intriguing of all this, but it's a liability.
it's also a myth of liability. It's also the myth of liability. In 14 years, we've had one fight. Neither of them were from the criminal justice system. We've had no major instances of large scale, outside of the normal shit that happens in a food business, like whatever stuff happens, like, but nothing on a large scale. We don't have that kind of stuff. It just doesn't happen. Like, I don't want to ascribe anything. It's just, people are people, and we have to view them as humans, and they can't, I think it's, maybe your guys say you can't be known for the worst thing you've ever done. Like, you're basically just saying you will always be known for this. You're always a felon. Sorry. And it's like, that's not really, that doesn't make sense. It's not born out of experience of life.
It is a huge myth, but our civil court system, it's not a myth. And that's where I sit in civil courts on this, where it happens all the time. When they're trying to meet in mediations or in the court itself. And so that's where it's where the liability is coming from out of civil court cases. When there's a damage in place, and that, I've said court once and have to pay it. So it's not a myth there. Right?
But those are just more attorneys interpreting the law. I mean, it's not, yeah, so that's what I would say. The attorneys are the problem on this. Mhm.
And also, a lot of people like to be gatekeepers. And the more, and that's an easy way to put up a roadblock.
I was going to say, a well-known, impact-oriented advisory firm was doing diligence on us. And we actually, they approved us, and we went forward with diligence. The very last, we spent a month and a half with them. We spent a month and a half with them going through very detailed, deep diligence on the work that we do, and it was great, and it was very interactive, and they were asking all the right questions and probing all the right ways. And at the very end, they said, so I feel really awkward about this, but part of our compliance, like, you and Lawrence have to do a background check. You and Lawrence have to do a background check. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm fine. I have no idea about Lawrence. I haven't asked Lawrence, but, okay. It's like, if you, whatever. And we were fine.
And
but
I was like, I'm
even
good,
that
I'm pretty
was
young,
like,
I haven't done anything.
even that, after asking all these probing questions, after really digging about, because, as you guys all know, like, the area, we're investing in private sector companies that are trying to disrupt the system, and you have to be very careful there because the private sector has done an abysmal job, right? They've mostly messed up the system, right? They've mostly amplified the bad stuff in the system. And this group was very aware of that, and they were very They were very careful to make sure that we were asking the right questions, that we had the right guardrails in place to prevent that from happening. So I was very excited about all the work that they were doing. And then they got to this last day, and the guy was very sheepish about the conversation with me, but it's still there, right? And their compliance group couldn't change that. And that's a problem, because that's not really necessary. There's no reason why there needed to be a background check on us for the work that we're doing. None really.
They might have asked for that, related to, the fact that you were doing the decarceration.
Yes, completely unrelated. They ask everybody that.
Standard.
Yes,
100%.
yes,
Well, or your social security number.
yeah.
I want to ask a question. You go ahead.
I was just going to add on to underscore Matt's point about culture too, because we find that sometimes the employers who have stated the most progressive company cultures are actually have the biggest barriers to bringing in people out of prison, because they want to protect their people, or like they don't fit in, and it's the companies that are like, no, we're pretty transactional, like we don't want to hear about it, just come on in, that do that.
Well, I think also part of our work is bringing people into proximity of those that we want to serve. So we usually tell the CEOs or the HR reps, like, these are actually very normal feelings. There may be fear, there may be uncomfortableness. You don't know how to bring it up to your team, like or how do you bring this up to your team? But we tell them, like, get to know them, like, get a conversation, ask them about their journey, if this is somebody that you want to bring on board. That's another way that we've gone about it.
I mean, just like people are messy. Everybody's messy. All humans are messy, and I think you need to have more conversations. You need to talk to people as if they're another human, and just recognize that, like, it's not always pretty. Not everyone's a clean box, like clean situation, like, and that's okay. It's not a problem. It's not a problem or a culture problem.
You wanna go?
I'm not sure if this is the pieces of this, but I was just wondering if folks are able to just, okay, so now they're employed in whatever job. Does that mean they're able to rent an apartment or have a bank account? I mean, would it probably that weird because they have to live somewhere too, right? So they can go to their job, or
Well, I mean, so we work with a company called Community Financial Resources, which helps get people what's called like a focus card. So the focus card, it's kind of like starts you kind of like bank adjacent. But so if you don't have, the identifications, you don't have the house, like, it's meant for those types of folks who just need an entryway. They basically need to not have money under their mattress, and they just need it to be parked somewhere. Then you can get a focus card. So that's kind of like for us, that's like the step one. Yeah, so it functions just like an ATM debit card. Like, the bank administers it, but it's not. You don't have a banking relationship yet. So they admin everything. You could use their ATMs, but once you build up a little bit of history there, you get your identification, you have a place to live, then you move into the bank. Now they start you with a basic debit card, and then they can start building your credit for you, the community financial resource folks. So they start giving you like a secured credit card, and then you move to a non-secured credit card, so they help you, but that first step is what's called a focus card. What they call it.
Pick up on the identity thing. Things are undoubtedly different here in California. In the state of Ohio, if you lose your identification when you're incarcerated. In order to get a new state-registered identity, you need to go in a number of cities into a federal building. You know what's coming next, don't you? In order to get in the federal building, you need a government-issued ID.
Yeah.
So the ODRC said, we've got the answer. We'll issue an ODRC identity card, which of course is exactly what you want to do, is go, look, I have my prison department identity card.
Yeah.
And that's a significant problem in some states, which is Indiana too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like one of my personal friends. I was telling you guys about him. Like we were doing a life sentence together. He's home. He's been home a year and a half. He still doesn't have an identity card because he doesn't have a social security. To get the social security, he needs his driver's license. To get the driver's license, he needs a social security, or he needs a birth certificate. So it's a big
How
circle.
do you get a job if you don't have a driver's license because you can't get to the job? And if you get pulled over because you don't have a driver's license because you're trying to get to the job, boom, you're going back to prison. So there's all these traps that are there to catch you.
Mhm.
And we haven't talked to housing, that was the
Yeah.
question. So HUD has, so we cannot have discrimination for race, for sexual orientation, gender, but for certain felonies, you're prohibited from getting houses. Housing's a big issue where people will rent or not rent, and even in public housing or unfunded housing, you can discriminate against. In my state, you would not be allowed to rent.
Well, I say that's kind of what the prison system has done is you can't discriminate on race or color, but you could say you could discriminate based on a conviction. I mean, PPP loans during COVID, my company, I filed for it, and on page like 3 of the application, it says, have you ever been convicted of a felony? And I click yes, and it's grayed out. So we actually had to sue the SBA. It was a class action lawsuit. Defy Ventures sued the SBA. We overturned that, so that got changed. Yeah.
I think she's been waiting.
Hello, Susanna here. I have experience in reentry work, so I was saying I have lots of questions for you all. I could pick your brain for hours. But I think the biggest questions, first of all, I'd say if you're wanting to learn more about this topic, I highly recommend 13th by Ava DuVernay. I also it's called 13th. It's about the 13th Amendment and how it essentially legalized slavery within a prison context and did not made slavery non-legal outside of that context. So the only place that slavery is legal now in the United States, slave labor, is technically in a prison context. So that's kind of the gist. I'd also highly recommend you read up on Ban the Box, which is the national initiative to remove background checks as a part of employment. Other than that, I just was really wondering from you all, we talked very briefly at the front about the role of business and entrepreneurship in this conversation particularly, but I'm wondering from your perspectives, how do you see business and particularly the opportunity for self-employment as something that's uniquely beneficial or is uniquely positioned to tackle this idea of working with returning citizens and providing them opportunities to economic advancement in general?
Can you say your name?
Susanna.
Susanna?
Yes.
Any organization?
Yeah, I'm Susanna. I'm from the Seattle Good Business Network. So Seattle.
So, I mean, for me personally, I think, we say we're not a business with a mission, we're a mission with a business. And we're in the people business and we happen to have a bakery. And I think business is uniquely positioned because it can be such a multiplier. And it sits at the intersection. Yesterday we had to talk about employee ownership, and it kind of really sits at the intersection of power and equity and ownership and value and growth. It really kind of covers all of these different topics, and it's really a choose your own adventure game that you could really customize and build out an amazing impact. You could build companies that could scale an insane amount of impact with business, that can deliver that impact that is just unique, and it sits at all these different intersections. So it could just be a really powerful force in my eyes.
100%. And I think, Chris, you can definitely talk a little bit about how, VC can maybe play a role in, influencing and helping develop some of these businesses, as well as how it's a part of a larger group of nonprofit money, philanthropic, and
Yeah.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. And also to pick up on some of the educational topics here as well, a great sort of back-to-back with 13th is Slavery by Another Name, which also really tells the history of prisons in this country post-Reconstruction, which is like really fascinating, and they go like really well together, those two. And of course, the new Jim Crow is another good, really important one. Slavery by Another Name and the new Jim Crow, two other ones. In addition,
Atlanta Bureau Chief and Wall Street Journal. There's a movie along with it.
yeah. And then, so the one thing I will say is what's really important to me in this context is, I've never, in all sort of social, attacking social issues, you'll hear points of view that say this is a policy issue, or let the market fix it, or this is a philanthropic issue. And I don't believe any of these things ever get solved unless all three of those things are working together. It's really important that when we build our advisory team, we have somebody that's been 50 years in nonprofit criminal justice reform. We have somebody that's been decades in investing around social justice. And we have somebody that was a chief of staff for one of the most progressive DAs in the country, right? So intentionally designed to pull those three things in and understand those three things as we think about solutions. Because not every solution, it's kind of like different investment models. Not every business is appropriate for venture type investment. Some need loans, some need other programmings. Don't jam a business into the wrong kind of financing. Same thing with solving problems. Not every problem is solved by the market. Not every problem is solved by policy. Sometimes the most interesting solutions actually integrate all those things, and so that's what we focus a lot on.
I think too, also a business is unique in the sense that it's not something where somebody else is delivering value to that population. They have their own agency to create within the business. They're not being delivered a service. They're creating their own value. And that's just a unique function of a business that it doesn't happen from a philanthropic community or policy, whatever.
I saw 1, 2, 3.
Can I answer that real quick too? Just because like entrepreneurship, that is what our wheelhouse is, right? Like we say, it's career readiness, personal development, and entrepreneurship. Our program is called CEO of Your New Life. It's about ownership, but and usually people are like, oh, tell us about your success stories. How many businesses? What businesses? And like, yeah, Defy, we've helped create 150 businesses of men and women coming home from incarceration, but we also say our success stories are the ones, let me tell you about the one that didn't go on to create a business, but now is working full time. I mean, like we look at it like somebody coming home from incarceration and the lens of entrepreneurship, lessons of grit, resiliency, pivoting, those are all part of a reentry journey for them. So we look at it, we build or nurture or cultivate problem solvers, not complainers. So they, even when they're working in employment, they come to their supervisors or the managers with, here, oh, I see a problem here, this is how we're solving it. So they bring value to whatever company they step into. So yes, entrepreneurship, because they can scale, get higher, but I think just the lens of it can also, they would do well.
Hi, I'm Halon, and I'm from Trillium Asset Management, which is a sustainable investment firm in the public markets. And I think this conversation is a lot about what the private sector is doing, or the private side of investment is doing. But I'm also interested in what we can be doing in the public equity space. So I'm curious if you have seen, publicly held companies with a really big population of fair chance employees or second chance employees, or what we could be advocating for at these companies, like whether it is ban the box or if there's something beyond that we could, that we could do.
Yeah, so one thing for sure I know I can start with is, you guys are all familiar with As You Sow, I'm sure. As You Sow has a prison free funds screen that we were able to participate in part of the creation of. But that's the other side of this, right? The 4,000 companies that exist today that are profiting off of continuing the system as it is today, right? So part of it is, how do we look at the public market? And unfortunately, the vast majority of the public companies, as it relates to the space, are actually not doing such good things. Biggest thing is prison labor, which we talked about, right? But there's a lot of other things like, the telecom industry charging ridiculous rates to individuals to make phone calls home, right? Which is like a huge. Yeah. But what I don't know, and maybe some other people have some ideas, I'm not aware of any publicly traded companies right now that are making, that are leaders in fair chance hiring. I know that there are a number of companies that are posting on Holly's, I forget the name of his company. Yeah, right. And so there are some that are doing this work, but I don't know how many are doing it really effectively. You might have better insight to that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, so a couple things here. I've heard that say about ban the box, and what we've seen is they ban the box, but then after they can turn around and still do a background check because the banning the box is only on the front end. So that's still a barrier right there. A publicly traded company, we recently just did a fair chance hiring simulation for Amazon and their international HR team, and it was still, how do we get them to the table to talk about this? When we talk about a publicly traded company and what they can do, even part of their, an example is Google. Google has their Google org, and they had signed on with us for a while to give help give Chromebooks for those coming home from incarceration. But I think even partnering or making it an intentional part of their Google Gives or another company's philanthropic dollars to help either nonprofits or other mission-aligned companies to build something out. That could be something, but I don't really see a lot of it either.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would be your advice on getting getting a population to hire from that?
Partner with organizations like ours.
Yeah, but you need POs in the room, because if you don't, you are going to be in a world of hurt, and a lot of it could be unintentional. When we first started, I didn't know, hey, I changed this guy's schedule, and it was too last minute. He didn't tell his PO. He got a surprise inspection. Bam, he's gone. So you need them involved because they are a gatekeeper and they have a very important impact. But Firebrand has 10 or 12 different workforce development groups we work with. Some work with groups inside, some work out. Some do a hybrid. You build a network of different workforce development groups that can help provide a good pipeline for you, and they can kind of help do some vetting for you in terms of yes, this person would be a good fit for your company or whatever. But we work with a lot of workforce development groups, and hey, these are the positions we have. Have them give me a call, and then they'll screen folks for us.
CDCs or what? Workforce development, what do you mean by that?
So it could be groups like CEO, Boss, to 5 Ventures, 5 Keys, just different groups that West Oakland. Youth organization, It just depends. So we find these groups. We say, hey, we are actively seeking the populations you're serving, and then they happily help us out. Yeah, but you need POs involved, I think.
Yeah, and then I think there's, and then on our side, like what we do for employment partnerships is we vet, like, okay, this is what you're looking for. Like recently we just inked an MOU with Union Pacific where they're going to start our graduates at $58K a year in union conductor jobs, but with a 2-year management track. But then one of the agreements that we had to get from them is like, hey, if you're going to interview, like this is the candidate profile you're looking for. We're going to send you candidates. Your agreement to us is if this person is not a fit, let us know or give us feedback on how this person can improve. What we agree is on our end, we're going to do monthly check-ins with you to see how our candidate's doing, what other things can be done. Because of the system with the PO, like we've had that, like where one of our guys got hired on at an electric bus company, building and manufacturing stuff, and they said, we love it when he's on the job, but at least once or twice a month, he just calls in the morning of the shift and says, I can't make it. We got to fire him. But the CEO's like, we love him, but what's going on? So on our end, we talked to our candidate, and it's like, my PO's not supporting my job. He's calling me the morning of, and I have to go in for a piss test. I have to show up so it's like, how do we support that component of it? So there's building, so I would say partner with partner organizations. I mean, I'd love to get your card after this. We're based here in San Diego too.
But I think having a group too, I mean, there's a lot of nonprofits out there that claim to do this work that do a really shite job as well. So, I mean, you need a group too that has a case manager on the other end. Like you have to have somebody on the other end who could have that conversation when you're saying, hey man, I love this guy, but keeps calling it. That happens every week at Firebrand. Like that story is like so routine, and you have to build a culture around that with the staff that doesn't have any experience with the criminal justice system, because then that can be kind of a situation. But you have to have somebody on the other end. Like you need that PO to be involved, but you also need somebody who's having a daily, monthly, weekly conversation. It's super important. But there's a lot of groups who like help you, and they're making a ton of cash off of just like basically just being transactional.
So just to follow up on this, right, there's a group training that you will call private. And what they do is they actually pay their employees to fund their shift to stay for financial counseling, psychological counseling, and broader workforce development. And they pay them to bring the therapist to the actual site. Yeah, it's really great work. Our venture partner in Indiana is doing it. They show up, they got a job. So what's your position on providing those services? How important is that to support the employee base? Because you actually run the real company.
Yeah, I think you have to, and you have to invest in the human, and that means you have to look at all these different ways it takes for them to show up, and that some of that's blocking and tackling of licenses and cars, but some of it's also just like they've never had a manager, or they probably don't have the best experience with like authority and hierarchy and structure, and like they may need some help with that, or like, so I mean you need to lean into those conversations and have them, and there's a lot of groups who will provide them, and that sounds like an amazing group. But yeah, I think for me it's just like, if you don't have a Defy Venture or something like that, like you need something, because just being like, I think it's difficult when it's just like, well, this is the box, this is our company, this is the culture, you didn't show up once this week, bye. Like that's going to be tough, because that's going to be tough.
Well, I think we need to wrap
Yeah,
up
closing
a little
thoughts.
bit.
Been waiting for a while.
So,
But, yeah, Josh Mailman. So I have a bunch of different comments. Okay. I mean, the last thing, at the end, when I finish, I want you guys, when you guys are together, to say, where are you in the financial process? You're raising money. You talk about, Ron talked about the Defy Ventures and it's where that's going. So, but I want to add a few things before I end. First, so we've been involved in a company called Social Insurance for a long time in the Bay Area, who also hire ex-offenders. Growing, they've had a relationship from the beginning with Robert's Enterprise Development Fund. Okay, so the co-founder has a great relationship with them. So I want you guys to talk to them because I think Robert's has been trying to give us workplace development money forever, and they haven't been ready. Okay, but they might have other resources that somehow you can draw on. So I think that's a good conversation. Second thing, I think it'll really help this community if there's 20 enterprises, for-profit enterprises around the country that are similar to what you're doing, Matt, what you're going to invest in, etc. That community needs some organization, okay? That community needs to start talking to each other because one way to get some money invested into that community is for that community to be a community. And right now, that community is not a community because nobody even knows what's out there, which is why, the De-Carceration Fund, I think, is so, really interesting. And then the other thing that, Juan, you mentioned, the thing about if you don't have a driver's license, you can't get, if you don't have a social security number, which can't prisoners have, ex-offenders have social security numbers?
They do have it, but to have the actual social security card, let's say they've been incarcerated 15, 20 years, they've lost it, and then they've lost.
So, and Juan, you might know we're connected with Pigeon Lee and Adobo, etc. So that little piece is a great piece for some piece of technology to like that's a great one to get handled because that then addresses a lot of other problems and maybe I don't know if Frederick gets through this phase, that might be a great thing to do. Say, okay, this is the amount of money that it's going to take to get social security cards for the former offenders to make something that's really hard easy, which then unlocks a bunch of other steps in the process. So anyway, that's but do now address the financial issue.
Sure. Great.
Matt, why don't you start?
So we're fundraising. So anybody's out there, if the Robert Edwards. So we're raising a $2 million round right now for growth for the next 12 to 16 months. We're growing at a 50% rate over last year, and we're kind of growing 50% every year is the plan, going from 100 to 125 to 150 employees in the next 2 years. So we are fundraising for that growth to scale our packaged sliced breads out of the Bay Area up to Pacific Northwest, Southern California, and to the Rocky Mountain region. So we are raising at the moment.
We are also raising. We have about $8 million in commitments so far towards a $15 million total fund size. So we had a first close last March. So we are in that fund stage where we are fundraising and deploying capital at the same time. I'm trying to work through that, but it is a challenge. But so that's where we're at. We are, as I said before, really focused on seed and even probably pre-seed kind of investments on initial investments because that's where there's really a lack of capital for these kinds of solutions and getting in there early, spending some time, and then being there for follow-on rounds, being there, reserving plenty of capital to be able to support these companies as they get through pivots and growth, and that's really been our focus. And be right in and involved with strategic leadership as well, whatever support we can provide.
And yeah, since we're a nonprofit, I guess we're fundraising 24/7. I mean, part of my job is a professional beggar, and
What's the budget of the 5 ventures?
the budget of the 5 ventures is $3.5 million. In Southern California, it's 1.1 projected for next year. I just did the budget for us for 2023, and there's a shortfall of about $400K just for SoCal. So if you have connections to family foundations and philanthropists that may be willing to support our mission and partner with us, yeah, I'd love those intros.
I wanted to add one other story. So there's a network of district attorney, of progressive district attorneys that's now being elected around the country. There's a group that's helping that to happen. So I'm wondering whether there's some relationship that there could be between those districts, the progressive district attorneys, everything's much less interested in incarceration. You're interested in changing the criminal justice system. And, for example, what you're doing, when you're saying, okay, we can do this for $1,500. So are there jurisdictions where there have been progressive district attorneys elected that might help in the process? The other thing I want to